I have talked a lot about how Lewis Cine is a good scheme fit for the Vikings, but today I want to explain exactly what I mean by that. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. And today on the show, I want to get deep into some scheme stuff. This is the off-season time where we can speak a little bit less about specific plays or moments and talk more about the structures that make this stuff go. And I kind of wanted to do one, so I crowdsourced some ideas, and thank you everybody who told me what you guys wanted to hear about. But I think my favorite was from Yannick Eckhart, who said, run fits. Let's talk about run fits. And that sort of ballooned in my brain to a more cohesive point about specifically Lewis Cine, and I guess to a lesser extent, Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth, and even Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith. This applies to them a little bit too. But really, let's talk about run defense in the Vic Fangio system. So today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's get into run fits. And the first thing you have to talk about, of course, when you're talking about run defense, is coverages. Naturally, that's the thing that makes sense to everyone, but it is true. So what that means is basically the coverage and the front need to pair together. It's you need to have two things that go together. And that's usually because of just the math, right? If you want an extra player in coverage, you need to call a front that can get away with having one fewer player. That concept right there is sort of the catch to everything that is going to follow, is the idea that if you want to dedicate more players to coverage, you have to dedicate fewer players to run defense and vice versa. And how you approach that dichotomy is pretty much the difference between like all defensive schemes. That is the first branch in the tree, where if the top of the tree is defense, and the first place where defense is split is whether they are a split safety defense or a single safety defense, or a two high defense or one high defense might be the way you've heard me talk about it. And that just means how many safeties do you have deep? Do you have both safeties deep and you're using them both in coverage? Or do you only have one safety deep and you're using one of them in the box to help with the run game? That will differentiate, like an old school cover three will have a safety in the box, a Cam Chancellor helping out with the run game. If you have a split safety defense, which is way more popular nowadays, as I think it's a little more modern, is to go split safety. You'll have both of them back and you'll have one less guy in the box. The obvious trade-off here is if you have an extra guy in the box, your run defense is going to be better, but your coverage will suffer. And the opposite, if you have another guy in the back, your coverage will do well, but then you'll have a tougher time stopping the run. So most defenses are sort of the mind that, all right, if we're going to struggle in something, I'd rather struggle in the run and give you good run plays, and I'd rather have you check into runs and call more runs than passes, right? I'd rather take 6 yards a pop on the ground than 30 yards a pop in the air, right? Makes plenty of sense. And the thing is, if you were like the old Legion of Boom, Pete Carroll could get away with this because they could basically put everybody in the secondary on an island, because those guys were Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas, and they could ask those guys to do way more in that like cover three, so that they could dedicate a lot of resources to the run, and they could still cover on the back end even without those players because they had so many good players. And then that's why you saw so many other sort of versions, like when Gus Bradley goes to Jacksonville or whatever, kind of fall apart because they didn't have the same horses. So that kind of brings me to what about the other side of things, which is where the Vikings will be and kind of everybody else, that they'll have two high safeties constantly. This is a big Fangio thing. I have to think it's a Donatel thing too, that they will align with two high safeties basically always. And that doesn't mean they'll always run cover two. It's just always going to look like cover two, which is what makes it hard on the quarterback. Everything looks the same and nothing gives you any information. And Ted Wynn at The Athletic actually wrote a phenomenal article about the Fangio scheme that will tell you a lot about how the Vikings will play, because they are going to do that basically to a T, unless Donatel has some weirdly different ideas from his mentor. That's going to kind of be the move. And if you have an athletics subscription, it's phenomenal. Honestly, I think it's worth a subscription on its own just to read that article. But I'll link it in the show notes if I remember to. But basically, the idea is always we will have two deep safeties. And so that brings me into the run game. They will always make that choice to have more guys in coverage, less guys in the run. And the holy grail, the white whale of all things defense and defensive scheme and coaching, is how you get a gap back, or steal a gap back is the way coaches will say it, which is how you take a guy out of the box, and theoretically, that guy would have had a gap responsibility. How do you get control of that gap back, even though you just took that guy out of the box? There are a ton of different answers to this question, and if we're doing the branch thing, this is where the rest of them split off. Every Fangio-style defense is going to have those guys back, but it'll be a little different. Patrick Graham uses two gapping, so he'll just assign two gaps to one player, and that guy is going to be like Dexter Lawrence, or it was Dalvin Tomlinson a lot, and that will be kind of what you do. Or a Staley system might do it a little different. They might play gap and a half, which is what Fangio himself did, and I think that's what the Vikings will do. I think they said that's what the Vikings will do. I think Donatel already told us that, if I remember, which I'll explain. I'll explain right now. Gap and a half is, think about a simple situation on run defense. You got 5 offensive linemen, and then let's say you've got 6 defenders in the box, and so each defender has a gap, right? You've got 2 guys on the outside, 2 guys in the B gaps, 2 guys in the A gaps. Easy peasy, right? Everybody has a gap. That's single gapping. That's one gap. Everybody just has their place. Go be in that place. You should be good to go. And then 2 gapping is, somebody will have responsibility for one gap. So it's more about, if you have a 2 gapping nose tackle, they'll try to control the center. They get their hands on the center, and they want to be able to move that center to the left or the right, depending on if the running back goes to either side, and in that way they can cover 2 gaps. Gap and a half is a little bit of a hybrid where you have one singular gap, but then you have a secondary one that you can fall back to. So I have this gap here, and then if the running back happens to go into my secondary gap, I'll fall back and go try to make a tackle, but mostly I'm planting myself in this primary gap. And basically, Fangio uses those to create a lot of overlap. But what he also does, he sort of doubles down, is he also includes the safety really intimately in the run fit, even though that guy is lined up 20 yards back. And how they do that is where we finally get to the part of the story where Lewis Cine actually matters, and why his skill set in particular matters. And you can probably already figure it out if you remember his scouting report and what we talked about after the draft. You can already kind of tell where this is headed. But first things first, let me talk to you about betonline.net. If you believe in this system, and personally, I think it's going to take some time to really get it all put together, and I think it'll struggle at the beginning. That's okay. But if you disagree with me and you think this is going to be the best defense, and getting rid of Zimmer was all right, go bet on the Vikings, man. They're over-unders, 8.5 wins. If you think they can have a winning season, go gamble on it. You can do that at BetOnline. You can bet on more than just football there. I think the finals are set now, right? It's Celtics Warriors. Is that the move? Bet on that. How many games? What you bet on game 1 or whatever. You can bet on week 1 of the NFL. You can bet on the WNBA. You can bet on baseball. You can bet on golf or tennis or even big fights. You can even play your favorite Vegas casino games. You can do all of that stuff at betonline.net, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, or since it's hosted by Peter Bukowski, the Lost podcast. You can find that wherever you find your favorite show. Sorry, Peter. Let's keep going with this run fits thing. So run fits, as I described them, that's like a super oversimplified way to look at it. Everybody get in a gap, and that's kind of how it works. And everybody has their assignment. Roughly, that's how it works, but what you're not doing, and this is where the Sports Info Solutions and the PFF sort of lose me with like run defense grades or their run stats, like their run stops and stuff. It's not about everybody go chase and get the tackle. I think a lot of our understanding of run defense is the Madden sense. And like, if I remember, the Madden AI everybody just chases the ball carrier, and they all try to get past a blocker to get to the ball carrier. And that's how it works. And that's how a lot of people learn football. And if they didn't learn through that, they're probably learning through PFF, which basically charts it that way. Did you get the tackle? That's a plus. Did you not get the tackle? That's a super, super minor minus. And then if you don't get the tackle a whole bunch, those minor minuses add up, and then it looks like you weren't productive. But some players in a true run scheme are basically never supposed to get the tackle. Brett Coleman has a great video on run fits. He low key almost predicted that the 49ers would beat the Packers, and it was his preview for that game. But he was kind of explaining how the Packers' run defense works. And if you can stomach the Packers, it's a great primer on how these things typically work at an NFL level. And you have a lot of players who are playing something like he brings up something called 9 Jam 7, which is a fancy way of saying attack one shoulder, but then flash to the other shoulder. And it's supposed to kind of encourage the running back to think that he has one gap open to him, and then you flash across, and then he has to bounce back outside, and that whole situation takes a bunch of time. And by then, defensive backs have had time to get down to the line of scrimmage and get involved. You might be able to put together where this is headed. So if you do that kind of thing, that is a great way to build up some time for your safety to come back from 20 yards deep where he aligned to get back into the line of scrimmage and get involved in the play. And you can even assign that guy like an outside gap. And you can say, hey, you are responsible for the edge here. And yeah, you're going to really have to fly down the field to get it. But if this run is going to the edge, it's not going to get there until a whole bunch of other options have been exhausted and the running back's been doing reads and they're making bounces and it's going to take a while for him to get there, so you should have time. And if you're somebody like Lewis Cine, who is very explosive and has a really quick downhill trigger and can kind of flash from the 20 down to the line of scrimmage in an instant, you don't need to buy as much time. And that makes everything schematically a lot easier. That's the point of Lewis Cine. There's a lot more to him than that, and go listen to the other episode. I like his coverage abilities and stuff too. But in the run, that's the point of him. Even though he's not going to stack and shed alignment or anything, you're not really expecting that from your safety. But being able to have that quick downhill trigger, and very crucially, go from standing 20 yards off the ball to a gap in the line of scrimmage in as little time as possible means I have to buy as little time for you as possible. But this is where we kind of get into split safety again versus single safety. In single safety, because everything can widen out a little more, you've got more guys in the box, you kind of don't want guys getting the edge. You don't want to spill them to the outside because you don't have as many defensive backs to clean that up. You would rather corral them inside and then get them caught up in the mess of bodies on the inside because you have so many bodies. So you want more edge setting force players. You would actually often ask maybe an outside corner. He'd play pass first, but then if it is a run, he'll come off of his coverage responsibility and then basically go set the edge, go cut off any bounces to the outside. And then the hope is that the running back sees that and says, okay, I can't go outside. I'll try to cut back inside where there's a whole bunch of defenders, and that's going to be a lot harder to be successful, and you should be able to get run stops that way. But again, there are going to be some people, like a lot of times the edge rusher's job is not to get a run stop. It's to set the edge. And this is a really big one when you have two high safeties, because if the running back can get the edge quickly, if he can bounce outside quickly, Dalvin Cook's the god of this. If he can bounce outside quickly, then he can get to the outside and into open space before that safety can get set up to make a tackle. And now it's an open field tackle situation, and that kind of favors the running back. Running backs are pretty good at making a guy miss one-on-one with nothing else around them, and that's where real disasters can happen. So it's really, really, really important that you have an edge rusher who will probably be doing this without much help, who can hold that damn spot. And if the running back does have to bounce to the outside, he's going to have to go upfield, and he's going to have to take a longer path, and that's going to have to take longer. He's probably not getting the tackle. And if he does go for the tackle, that can be a disaster, because if he misses that tackle, now the running back has a clear path to that edge, and you're going to give up 15 yards a pop, and they'll never have to throw at all. So that's a problem, right? And that is the problem that absolutely torched the Vikings last year. You want to know why the Vikings' run defense was so bad last year? It's because they couldn't do that. They got a ton of penetration and movement to the inside, but they could never get a running back to go that way. They could never force him to go outside. He just kept bouncing to the other side, and the best edge setter we had was like Kenny Willekes. We couldn't do anything about it. And when you get into more of the specifics, and maybe we'll have a little time to do it here, that's when you really see the magic of run fits and how they work with coverage. Because once you start defending RPOs and more horizontal passing stuff, then you start to realize that run and pass work so dynamically with each other, and especially with good defenses. What you're telling a player to do against the run and against the pass should work in beautiful, beautiful harmony. And that takes the thought out of it. What's beautiful about a good defensive scheme, I loved this about Zimmer's scheme, that the first couple steps, whether it's a run or pass, are the same thing. And that way you have a couple steps after the snap to watch the play and watch it declare itself before you actually have to make a decision, because your steps are the same either way. I'll explain that a little bit. So consider for a second an outside linebacker. An outside linebacker who probably has a coverage responsibility. Let's give him a coverage responsibility that's something like buzzing to the flat, which means he's the guy that is responsible for taking any swing passes, or if it's a bubble screen or something, his job in coverage is to go out and cover that zone. He's got a flat zone. And then in the run, he has a random B gap or something. That linebacker will be in a little bit of conflict. If it's a run, he has to run forward, and if it's a pass, he has to run to the side. Now, let's say we want to fix that, right? We want to align those two vectors a little bit more. If you have him, say, do what's called a scrape exchange. A scrape exchange, really quick, is just the linebacker will actually loop around to the outside and a defensive lineman will flash across one gap. It's almost like a stunt, but it's against the run. So a defensive lineman, so you got an edge rusher. Let's say you've got Daniil Hunter, and Daniil Hunter's job would be to rush upfield, but instead let's give him the responsibility where he rushes to the inside of the tackle. So he's cut, crashing really hard inside. And then we'll say Jordan Hicks, and Jordan Hicks's job would be to cover that B gap, but we just sent Daniil Hunter to that gap, so we'll loop him around to the outside. That's a little bit of a tricksy thing, but really what it gives you is now Jordan Hicks is taking two shuffle steps to the outside, whether it's run or pass. He's either shuffle step, and buzzing to the flat, or shuffle step, looping around and setting the edge. And if you have a linebacker who's strong enough to set the edge, which I think Jordan Hicks is, then you can do that. Anthony Barr was great at this. So now if it's a play action pass, Jordan Hicks doesn't have to worry about trying to read it. It probably will be declared by the end of those two steps, or at least it'll be closer to declared by those two steps. And if he does get out of position a little bit, it's not going to be far out of position because his two angles are really similar. Now, where the real genius of all of this comes in is now you've got Daniil Hunter crashing inside, and you can tell your defensive lineman, hey, if it's a run, do your gap. If it's a pass, do your pass rush, but then loop around after a little delay, and we'll make a stunt out of this. So now kind of whether it's run or pass, you've got some tricksy thing happening up front. You've got everybody going to the right place in the first two steps. Everybody's going to the same place in the first two steps, and you don't have to worry about play action. It's a good way to counter play action, is to kind of align your run and your pass. And that's why like run pass ratio and are you fooling him or anything like that is all so bunk to me, because if the defense across from you is good, then the ratios aren't going to matter anyways. And what's quote unquote biting on play action might just be the first couple of steps he was instructed to do anyways. And a lot of times they're instructed to just say, run first, pass first, just like play it that way regardless. And so it all kind of becomes a lot more moot than you think. But let me bring that back to Lewis Cine and why Lewis Cine can really be an asset. Because if you're doing all that tricksy tornado stuff on the front end, that back end is probably going to have to do something more aggressive to make that coverage work. If you're sending your linebacker buzzing to the flat, you probably have to have your cornerback cover a little more space, and you're probably going to have to have your safety cover a little more space. So that range is a lot more important. But more importantly, that is a particular run defense setup that really needs an edge player to come in and replace if that running back does get the edge around a guy who's like looping and doing something a little longer, right? Jordan Hicks is going to take a longer time to get to that edge setting part. And if it's, say, a sweep or a toss or something like that, he's probably not going to be able to get there. So you need a safety to come in and sort of fill it out and become the new outside player. And again, you need him to get from point A to point B really, really fast, and it's a really, really long way. So to sort of wrap all this up, Lewis Cine being able to cover a lot of ground really quickly, even if I don't care about how he didn't get any interceptions in college. I don't care about ball skills or is he a man cover or blah, blah, blah. He very undeniably has the skill of triggering downhill quickly. And that usefulness is that if you can rely on the safety getting to this spot in enough time, that means you can do a lot of fancier stuff on the inside, and the fancy stuff's going to do a little bit better, and not worry about the risks that it's giving up, right? You can cover a little bit more of your weak spots. But I think from a broader level, forget Lewis Cine for a minute. Really, that's just a through line that I put in so I could come up with a coherent title. With all of this, what you need to understand about run fits and run defense, because run fits are ungodly complicated. Like if you've ever looked up an actual run fit from a playbook, it's total German if you don't know what you're looking at. Like it's totally indecipherable if you're like not already familiar with it. And there's like, I try to be the point of entry, but it's only so easy on what is mostly an audio medium. But even if you don't retain any of that stuff, what you have to understand about run fits is that everybody has their place. And to me, when I'm watching run defense, what I really look for is who got to the place they were supposed to get to, and did they stay there? Or did they get to a place they were supposed to get to and get pushed away from it? Or what is more common is situations where you're trying to win a shoulder is the way that I tend to put it, which isn't that great, but I can't think of a better way to say it. But like you're trying to win the outside shoulder, right? Let's say you got, defender A and blocker B, and guy A is trying to get to the outside and guy B is trying to seal him off from the outside. And so now you have this kind of race to see who can get outside of who. And that's where the true competition of run defense is. There are a lot of plays where, hey, my job is to seal you off from the inside, and your job is to win my outside shoulder. And that means you're actually kind of going to both go for different things, and you'll both have one, you can both win your rep. And it's sort of a neutral thing. And you can actually even see when this happens, like guys won't push on each other as much or whatever. It's like you kind of seal and stalemate with each other, and it's just kind of like an easy rep. Like you both like seal each other off and stalemate each other and go back to the huddle going like, well, I won that one. It's kind of funny. But really where metal is tested is when you're both trying to get the same shoulder. And if you want to look for who's winning in a run fit, it's did they win that shoulder? And really the question to ask, if that's too difficult for you to find in real time, the question to ask is if the running back came to the gap he's trying to be in, is that running back gonna be able to get by? Or is he going to get yards? And if the answer is no, that running back couldn't have come there, you won your rep, and you can sort of log that as a win, even if the running back went totally a different direction. And with your eyes and that knowledge, you're always going to be able to get a more accurate picture than any charting that has to have something substantive to chart, right? You're going to have a better picture than did you get a run stop, because if the run play went the other way, you were never getting that run stop, but you can still have won the rep and demonstrated a skill that is useful. And it's going to be better even than like the dots and the like next gen stats algorithms and stuff that look at did the ball go past your blocker, right? Or did you get within a yard of the ball carrier and did you get that tackle? Those kinds of things. Good questions, and they're going to have some decent correlation with success and stuff. But as humans, with our eyes, this is why people say watch film. As humans, with our eyes, we'll be able to answer those questions because we don't have to like train a model to do it and hope it doesn't get buggy, and that I think will help you level up in your ability to like ask if this guy is good at the run. And if you're asking, is this guy good at the run, and you're looking up any sort of stat that's based on whether or not they got a tackle, you're probably missing like 75% of the picture. It's a decent proxy, but it'll only ever be a proxy to actually looking at what his job was, and then asking, did he execute that job? And forget where the ball carrier came or what the result of the play was. Did he do what he was supposed to do on the play? That's a super basic heavily oversimplified version of a run fit. Maybe someday I could go over like an actual play call and be like, okay, and then we do the defensive lineman, and his job is this, and that job is that. I did like the anatomy of a play once where I'll find like some 2 yard run that the Vikings forced and say, okay, this is why that worked. But hopefully that gives you a better sense of run fits in general, and then why Lewis Cine's like downhill trigger ability opens up so much else. That is, I guess, what the goal of the show was. I hope you got it. We'll go back to a little more normal stuff tomorrow with Twitter Tuesday. So hand me your questions. You can send them to me at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings. You can always send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com, or you can do the Google form, which is linked in the show notes, along with that thing I said I was going to link, which I already forgot. So hope that's in there. All right. See y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.